Right, so I unfortunately don't speak any Spanish other than cerveza, mojito. I mean, I'm Danish, so we can either do this in Danish or in English. I'll let the translators decide. Okay, they say English, so we go with English, okay. Okay, so I represent the Open Knowledge Foundation, and I want to talk about a theme that's been ongoing throughout the day, involving citizens in actually reusing all the data that's being made available. Okay, so this is scrolling, okay. So it's really encouraging to hear all these nice references being made to the work that we do at Open Knowledge Foundation. And to put it short, we are a non-profit organization based in the UK, but more importantly, we're actually a global network of local groups that work on a local level. And this is also something that was mentioned earlier on, how to actually get people to understand and use data, you have, or a good approach is to take a point of departure in the local. Basically what we do is, on one hand, develop communities. I'm going to go into depth about what that is in this presentation, but also a little about the tools that we produce through these crowdsourced efforts. These tools are being created through open source principles, and thereby including the communities that will actually be using them. CCAN, of course, being one of them. So it's a combination of those things. And all these tools are available for free. So my idea in this brief talk, and I brought my clock, so I'll hopefully stay within the time, is to hopefully inspire through some of these concrete projects of citizens reusing data, inspiring you to actually use some of these tools or create similar tools and contribute to the global open data community like that. Basically, the point in the open data development that we're at right now is that a lot of data are being published under open licenses, and they're being made available in the national portals and the regional portals, like Aragon, and that's beautiful. So in the maturation stage that we've reached so far, it's now time to take the next step and start to really focus on how to actually use those data to ensure that we can also produce the proof of concept that continues the promise that open data can really benefit us in so many ways. But how do we do that? We have all these open data portals. A few of them are here, including the Spanish one, dados.gov.es. And we need basically to involve the citizens in using these portals. And when I say citizens, I'm actually not just referring to individuals, but also businesses and other entities in society that find themselves on the demand side rather than the supply side, which is, of course, usually governments and regional governments. And I want to present three ideas now that I hope for you to take with you. Three principles for how to actually do that. One is empowering people. One is peer networking, letting citizens network and learn from each other. And finally, also through creating a data literacy, that is by having people learn how to actually approach data and use data. So first, the learning part. Give citizens the skills to use data. I think it was Luca who mentioned earlier that, or maybe Jose, mentioned earlier how data can seem a bit intimidating when found in its raw form. Most of us don't really know how to comprehend these huge tables with numbers. An important sentiment is that we need to create knowledge from data. And that's also why our organization is called the Open Knowledge Foundation, not the Open Data Foundation, even though data is a strong component, because knowledge is what we as human beings understand and relate to, and also can use to build new things. What we basically want to do is go from the the binaries, the ones and zeros, into data that's understandable and comprehensible in a way, as this example here, which is from the open spending tool, which I'll get into a little later, but basically something that is understandable and reusable. An example of that is this one, which is a great example of a data visualization dealing with pollution, world in carbon dioxide emissions, where we basically not only visualize data in a great way, but also provide context by comparing different data sets. And this is a good example of how it all of a sudden becomes relevant for the general citizen or the general business to actually seek opportunities to use these data to create jobs, growth, or just engaging in politics. So transparency is, of course, also an issue. But the learning part is really important, because it's one thing to lower the threshold for understanding data as such. We also need to give rise to the literacy among the people on how to actually use data and what we can use it for. One of those approaches is an initiative that we're running called the School of Data, which is an initiative to actually pull people together through workshops and tools and show them how to actually dig into data sets and produce could be something relevant for what they do, but most of the time it's also just as a way to actually get a bigger understanding of what all these data really are. A large part of that is the data journalism segment, which is also part of the learning that we need to stimulate, that journalists actually manage to analyze the data that is being released as a way to act as a spokesperson for adding transparency to the numbers provided by the governments. Here's a picture from one of the School of Data workshops held earlier this year. And mentioning these tools that we produce, here's one of them, which is the Data Journalism Handbook, which is basically a how-to guide for journalists getting into open data and learning the field, and also some case studies about how this has been used successfully in the past. This is available online for anyone to download if you search for the title. Another one is this one that was mentioned earlier by Charles, the Open Data Handbook, which is the how-to primer for getting into open data, both for people on the supply side, but also on the demand side. Anyone curious towards learning about the basics of open data can go to the Open Data Handbook, which is also available for free online, and learn about that. So, second idea is the peer networking concept. Basically, the idea of bringing people together locally and connect to the global communities. And this is what we do with our local groups network, but also an idea that can be applied in a more general way. Basically, bringing people together makes it easier to learn. And then you can easily connect to groups in other countries and learn from their ways and have an exchange. So basically, we have, scrolling is a bit hard. The Working Groups Network is one of the two international networks that we facilitate. Basically, working groups are these thematic groups that cross borders in the sense that anyone can join. I've pasted in a few. It's a bit small, the letters, but examples are our Open Government Data Working Group. There's a huge mailing list with over 800 people in it, discussing everything relating to OpenGov data, and thereby exchanging information across borders. So it's topic-based groups that center around these different topics. Others are Open Transport, Open Glam that deals with cultural content, Open Science, Open Economics, etc., etc. The other network is this one, our Local Groups Network. And this is one of my main roles within the Open Knowledge Foundation, to community coordinate all the groups across the globe. Currently we have 25 and many more coming in. We recently launched an application scheme, and since then we've had applications coming in from 2 to 3 countries per week. So it's apparently a very popular model of learning about open data and open knowledge, by organizing locally and then connecting to other local groups, and thereby expanding your own knowledge, but also contributing with local experience and local knowledge to the global commons. We have here some examples. The bottom picture is, among other, some of our Brazilian group members, and this is the main idea: get people together locally and learn about things such as open knowledge. Another thing that we put a lot of energy into in our local groups network is organizing global campaigns based on what the local groups actually want to engage in. A great example from earlier this year was the Open Data Day, which took place in February, where we had over 20 groups across the world engage in Open Day events on the same day, and basically taking a point of departure in their current activities, but grouping together under a common campaign that was advertised internationally, also beyond the Open Knowledge Foundation network, way beyond, but basically using that as a platform to bring in more people locally, and of course also to bring open data to the forefront, on the agenda, through hackathons and meetups and so forth. This is some pictures from Germany, where they actually used Open Data Day to have a School of Data workshop, which was very popular and a lot of fun. So the last bit is empowerment. And this is also very important on the supply side, because supply side being the data owners, the providers of the open data, because it's very important to actually provide tools that make accessing and interacting with the data available. Some examples include this site, publicdata.eu, which we've developed based on the CCAN data management platform that was also mentioned just before. But basically, this is a data portal that harvests national data portals' metadata. So I'm pretty sure that Aragon's data are actually also in here. But on top of that, the 2.0 version of CCAN actually also adds a whole social element to the platform, so that it's no longer just a simple, or not simple, but at least a non-social platform for data, but also a way where citizens can go in and make themselves a profile and follow the development on specific data sets, as well as visualize the data sets and compare them. I think that was also mentioned earlier. I couldn't see the slides, but basically you add meaning and understanding to the data available in the platform, and you have this social element where you can share findings in social media. You can connect with other users, follow other users that you find interesting in terms of what kind of data sets they're following, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a way to provide or empower people with the tools to actually dig into data in a easy and comprehensible way. Another tool is this one, the Open Data Census, which is basically a crowdsourced monitoring of open government data. People can go in and search for data sets in their own country, and then add them to the system, where they add to the national score, and the country is then ranked. As you can see, United Kingdom, not surprisingly, is leading. Unfortunately, Spain is out of the visualization, but I think it's It's right under Italy. So that's another way to engage people in actually finding out what kind of data are open in my society. There's also a city census on this site where you can do the same thing with data on a city level. Open spending, I mentioned earlier, another tool. The aim with open spending is to map expenditures on government level. Basically, you can also add data and analyze public spending data in a way to provide context and understanding and meaning to the data. Also, another way to empower app competitions. We see a lot of app competitions happening all over Europe, which is a great way to actually engage the tech community in a way that uses open data and very clearly visualizes how data can be used. One example of a concrete measure in this is the Apps for Europe project, which is recently launched and trying to group app competitions together and use data on an international level. So my conclusion is simply, and this is what I'm hoping that you bring with you from this short presentation, involve the citizens in making the open data into knowledge. And I want to say, if you feel enticed to interact more with the Open Knowledge Foundation, you can either do so with our Spanish group. Some members are actually here. Somewhere, right there, yes. Or, of course, with the working groups that are to be found on the Open Knowledge Foundation website. I also want to quickly advertise the yearly event, Open Knowledge Conference, which takes place in Geneva this year, which is really the place to go if you feel like tapping into the most current discussions about open data in general. Right, so if any of you have any questions, I'll be around for the rest of the day and I would love to talk to as many as possible. If there are any representatives from the Spanish National Data Portal, DATOS, I would love to get in touch with you as well. We might have been emailing, so please come and say hi. Thank you.
About open data in Denmark?
Sorry, yes. Is the mic? Okay, it's still on. Sorry. So Charles and I were speaking just before, and we got talking about how we tend to always talk about the UK when we talk about open data. And of course, with Spain being in the Mediterranean, you also often talk to your neighbors, but maybe not hear so much about further away. And since I'm Danish, we started talking about open data in Denmark. And a concrete example of something that's really motivating right now is how last year, the Danish government released a lot of large data sets, including geospatial data. And just last week, we began to have some really interesting articles popping up in mainstream media where businesses are actually concretely saying that they're hiring more people now directly because of the release of these data, simply to pursue the opportunities provided by these data. So I think that's the level that we're reaching now. The maturity has gone beyond releasing the data. We still need to work to do that, but now we need to really focus on how to include the citizens, the businesses, and so on in actually using these data and showing that this is the way forward. Thanks.